Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel channel for foodies. I'm Brent Peterson, and we're in Lisbon, Portugal. And I thought today we would do a video on some of the pros and cons of living in Portugal. We're entering our third year living here, and I thought this would be a good time to do it. I've done a few other videos on life in Portugal and got a lot of positive feedback about that. So I figured we'd do one pros and cons. A few pros, few cons of living in Portugal. When we moved here, we didn't know anybody. We'd been to Portugal before just on vacation, but we hadn't lived here and we didn't know what it was going to be like. And frankly, not knowing anyone was a little bit scary, but we managed to create a group of friends here that are both people moving here from other places and people who are Portuguese. And it's just been really wonderful for our quality of life to be able to count these people amongst our friends. And Portuguese people themselves are so friendly and welcoming and helpful. They want to help us at every turn. And, you know, when we first moved here, people were like, why'd you choose Portugal? Why'd you choose our city? They were so excited to learn more about why these Americans were living here. Because even though you get a lot of media coverage about everyone's moving to Portugal from the United States, the fact is there's only 10,000 of us here in Portugal out of a population of 10 million. So that's a minuscule percentage, 1/10 of 1% of the population. So there's not a lot of us, and we're still a little bit unique, although there are more Americans and North Americans moving here all the time. So they're very anxious to find out about us, what we're interested in, and they want to practice the language. They want to practice their English on us, and we want to practice our Portuguese. So I'd say the people, their friendliness, strangers will go out of their way to help you in any way that they possibly can. And it's really wonderful and it's really refreshing. So that's the first pro. The first con, I would say, would be the bureaucracy. Now, when we first moved here, we heard people complaining about the bureaucracy, and I kind of poo-pooed it a little bit because I was like, yeah, I've been to the DMV. I know what bureaucracy is like. The fact of the matter is the bureaucracy, whether it's for government or for utilities or for anything that you need done, can be a challenge, especially with the language barrier. So this is when I often enlist some of our Portuguese friends to help us. But even then, sometimes it doesn't help. One thing that I always say when we're going to a government office to get something done, to get our tax status updated, or as a matter of fact, to go get my driver's license next week, I always say, don't expect to get it done in one trip, all right? If you go and you get it done on the first trip, time to celebrate. Go out and have a glass of wine because it's pretty rare to get it done in one stop. Usually it's 2 or 3 stops. You'll go in and you need a different piece of paper, or you need someone to sign something, or whatever it happens to be. And there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason for it. Of course, with our friends who are in the same boat, Americans who are going through the same bureaucracy, will often compare notes and we'll say, okay, I had to go to this particular place and I brought these documents and here's how they were signed or notarized or whatever, and here's what they asked for. And then we'll go, or someone else will go, and they'll need a completely different set of documents. And it seems really arbitrary. And also, it seems very much based on what the mood of the clerk is on that particular day. So it can be difficult to navigate, but I think you have to go in with a positive mindset, you know, and just be like, eventually this is going to get done. We're going to figure out a way eventually. And just say, all right, I'm going to have to go back at a later date and try and get this done. And that's what I'm dealing with right now with my Portuguese driver's license. This will be my 3rd visit. And one of the visits, completely my fault. Second visit, I don't really feel like it was my fault, but anyway, we're going back a 3rd time. Fingers crossed, I'm going to finally have a Portuguese driver's license here in Portugal. So we're at a restaurant called Gusto in Setubal, Portugal for our next pro and con of life in Portugal. But before I get to that, let me tell you what I've got in front of me. I already started in on this. This is hakuchi, I think is how you pronounce it. This is a very famous Georgian dish. I've heard people call it Georgian pizza. You can see why. It's maybe similar to a calzone more than pizza. Calzone with the top cut off. So it's a dough filled with cheese, topped with an egg. How can you go wrong, right? And it is so good. And this is a dish that you get everywhere in Georgia. It's one of the most famous Georgian dishes that you can get in the former Soviet Republic. This restaurant, Gusto, they offer a Portuguese menu, but on Sundays, the couple who runs it, they're from Russia, they're Russian, and they offer a special menu from a different former Soviet republic. Last week, for example, they had cuisine from Uzbekistan, and this week it's the Republic of Georgia. So we came on a Sunday to try this out. This is a brand new restaurant. It's only been open for a couple of weeks now. Been looking forward to come and try it. So this dish, outstanding. Karen got, it's called a salad, but you can see the Russian influence. It's like carrots and spinach and pomegranate seeds. Delicious. And then there's a beet salad, different than a beet salad that you might be used to. It's like shredded beets, pickled, delicious. And then there's eggplant. I mean, this is so Georgian. Beets, spinach, carrots, eggplant. These eggplant rolled up inside like a Georgian cheese. All right, so that eggplant is cooked perfectly, not overdone so it gets all mushy, not underdone so it's like leather, perfect. And then inside it's like a Georgian cheese. It's kind of like ricotta, but it's been drained, so it's not wet. It's drier, and there's some spices added. That is so good. Oh man. Anyway, so talking about the pros and cons of living in Portugal. The pro and the con is just food. So we'll start with the pros. You know, one thing that I've noticed is food in general in grocery stores and restaurants is a lot less expensive than in the United States. Obviously, that's a pro. Also, we do a lot of cooking at home. Groceries, fresh fruits and vegetables tend to be a lot less expensive here than they are in the US. And we have access to what's considered one of the best green markets in all of Portugal, if not Europe. Shop there 3-4 times a week getting fresh fruits and fresh veggies. It's also known for their fish. And it's just great to be able to go there and get, produce from Portugal, but also from around Europe and around the world at a reasonable price. So we're constantly stocking up on really, really good, high quality produce. Our vendor that we go to, they have bees. They keep bees on their property. We buy this giant jar of honey. Must be a quart of honey for €8. So that's a huge pro. When you go out to eat, the cuisine of Portugal is become very well respected. There's a website that I really like called Taste Atlas, and they recently ranked cuisines around the world by country. And Portugal came in 4th, up there with Japan and Greece and Italy and places like that, and ahead of places that are probably more famous like the United States and Spain, and I might have even been ahead of France. which was surprising, but that's how they ranked it. And that's because Portuguese cuisine tends to be, first of all, it's very tasty, but it's also, they use a lot of fresh ingredients prepared simply. So, and not to mention all the great pastries too. Not just pastel de nata. If you come to Portugal, there's so much more. A lot of pastries came out of the convents a couple hundred years ago, and they're very good and very, very tasty and inexpensive. So that's what it's like going out here to eat. I would say, though, if I had to come up with a con, one of the cons would be there's a certain sameness when you go out to restaurants, especially like a cafe or a tasca, which is an informal little restaurant, often mom and pop places. The food is always good. Food is very good. Usually you've got mom or dad out front and grandma in the back kitchen cooking. But the con would be there's a certain sameness. Like everywhere you go, they've got the same exact menu, the same exact things on offer. And while it's good, it can be a little bit tiresome getting the same stuff over and over. Now, that's beginning to change. Like you go to Lisbon, you get amazing African food from the former Portuguese colonies, places like Mozambique, Angola, Morocco, Cape Verde. Amazing Indian cuisine, Chinese cuisine, all of that stuff is available, and more is coming in all the time, especially now from the Middle East. When you get outside of Lisbon, outside of Porto, there tends to be less of that. What I've noticed here in Setúbal is we're starting to see the bubbling up of some variety of the cuisine. This is a perfect example here at Gusto. They've got Georgian cuisine on offer here. There is a great restaurant with folks from Nepal offering Nepalese cuisine. You know, there's actually more people from Nepal in Portugal than there are in the United States, which might be something that sounds strange if you've been reading media accounts of all the Americans are moving to Portugal. But there's more people from Nepal, and there's an excellent restaurant here. There's sushi restaurants, there's a Burmese restaurant here. There's an outstanding, really great Syrian restaurant in Almada, which is not far from here. So we're starting to see some signs of some diversity within the cuisine, which is really nice. So there you go. That's my latest pro and con. I am going to dig into this carb feast. Cheese, eggs, bread. Enjoy our food here at Gusto. So we're in Setúbal, Portugal. This is the city where Karen and I live. And this is Fort São Filipe, St. Philip's Fort, which is on a hilltop here in Setúbal. Some people call this the castle, St. Philip's Castle. It's not a castle because it was never like a royal residence. It was a military installation for defensive purposes. And you can see why. It's on the very top of this hill and it overlooks the harbor and the water, and you could easily see for miles and miles any potential threats approaching by water. And since you're on top of a hill, you can see any threats coming up the hill. And that was important when King Philip had this place built 500 years ago, because he was Portuguese. He was half Portuguese at least. His mom, I believe, was Portuguese, but his father was Spanish, and because of that, he was never really accepted by the Portuguese people as real Portuguese, and they didn't really like him all that much. So, you know, there's a rumor that in the bowels of this fort here, there are tunnels leading out to the countryside. So if Philip needed to make a quick escape, he could do so with him and his family and get away from the pitchforks and the torches that might be coming up the hill. But anyway, I wanted to conclude this video about the pros and cons of living in Portugal with a couple of pros and a con. And I'd say one of the main pros of living here in Portugal is just the quality of life, lifestyle in general. Portugal always ranks very high in the healthcare, usually in the top 10, the top 5 of worldwide countries for healthcare, and they have a very good public system. I've used the public system on occasion, and there's no cost to use that once you register for it. But generally, for our everyday health needs, we use the private system. We have private insurance, which is very inexpensive. We spend less than $200 a month between two people for very, very good health insurance. And to me, that's a huge pro, because you're not sitting thinking, am I going to be bankrupted if I get sick? So that adds to the quality of life. When you can go to a doctor and not have to worry about things, when you can regularly visit your doctor and the cost is very, very reasonable. So that's to me a big pro. But when I talk about quality of life, when I talk about lifestyle, I'm talking about day to day. You know, the fact that a lot of Portugal is very walkable is a big pro to me. The fact that there's good infrastructure for public transportation is a big pro. And just being able to go out and sit in a cafe, the cafe culture here is amazing. Being able to sit in a cafe, order an espresso for less than €1 and sit for as long as you want. Never feel rushed or shooed away. And it's great to be able to sit, and inevitably in our city, someone will walk by who you know and they'll chat for a moment. They may even sit down and join you for a coffee. And that makes for just a really nice way of life. And the pace of life here is just slower. It's very relaxed. And some people have trouble with that. Some people have difficulty unplugging and letting go of that North American go, go, go lifestyle and being in the rat race. But for me, I really enjoy it. And, you know, it doesn't bother me much when I go to a store that should be open and it's closed. There's a sign in there that says Volto já, which means back soon, because the proprietor decided on that day that the day was too nice outside and he got on a motorcycle ride, or he went to the beach, or, you know, for whatever reason. And to me, that's nice. You know, some people might get annoyed by that. If you really need to get something done, yeah, I can understand that would be frustrating or whatnot. But to me, it just adds to the charm of living here in Portugal. On the con side, I would say one of the major cons that I have about living here in Portugal is the smoking. There's still a lot of people who smoke in Portugal, and depending on what statistics you believe, it's about 28% smoking here in Portugal, and that's 2 in 7 people. Contrast that with the United States, where it's probably about half that many adults are smoking on a percentage level. So a lot more people are smoking here, and smoking is allowed outdoors in cafes, which is, to me, annoying. I can't tell you the number of times that we've had to move our table or move inside because someone right next to us lights up a cigarette and the smoke starts blowing out. I mean, to me, nothing ruins the taste of your coffee or your meal than cigarette smoke. And I really wish that they would change that. In the U.S., generally, you're not allowed to do that. Here, you can't smoke indoors in restaurants or in public buildings. You can, of course, smoke in your home, but for the most part, smoking has been banned indoors. I wish it would be banned outdoors, because one of the great joys in Portugal is being able to eat outside about 10 months out of the year. So that's a con. I don't want to end this video on a con, so I think I'll end it on a pro. And another great pro about living in Portugal is the incredible natural beauty in this country. And that's one of the reasons why I came to Fort São Felipe, because from here you can really get a visual of a lot of the natural beauty. We are right on the water here. We're looking over the Sado River. They call it the river, but I mean, the ocean is right there. It's just, a couple miles away. And this is awfully big for a river. And you can see across to the Troia Peninsula, which is also gorgeous. And you can see all of Setubal from here. It's really a wonderful view. And On the backside over here is Arabada, which is a nature park. And there's beautiful hills in there covered with, woods, and there's wildlife in there and fantastic hiking trails, and people bike back there and whatnot. And it's really gorgeous. And, Portugal is a small country. It's only about the size of Indiana. But the diversity from north to south is quite extraordinary. You go up into the north, it's very green, it's very lush. You go down into the south, you've got the beaches of the Algarve. It's very warm, it's very dry. You go inland, there's mountainous terrain. There's even a little bit of snow on a few of those mountains. So the diversity is quite striking. And, a lot of people come here for the beaches. They should. Beaches are gorgeous in the Algarve. We have, in my opinion, world-class beaches. I've lived in a lot of places with beaches. We've lived in Hawaii. We've lived in Rhode Island that has fantastic beaches. In Charleston, South Carolina, which nearby has things like Folly Beach. I would put the beaches right here within walking distance up against all of those beaches, and I think it would come out favorably. The beaches are gorgeous, and these beaches here, not nearly as crowded as down in the Algarve. They do get busy in the summer, but still. And they're absolutely stunning. And there's caves you can explore and all kinds of cool natural things like that. So that's my video for the pros and cons of living in Portugal. Obviously, that is not an exhaustive list. I've only presented a few things, pros and cons. And if you like this, comment below, like the video, and maybe I'll do some more, because I can think of a dozen other pros and maybe half a dozen other cons of living in Portugal that I think maybe you'll find interesting. But you tell me if you think it's an interesting topic to pursue further. If you like this content, you can also check out my website, destinationeatdrink.com. I also have a podcast by the same name. It's available on all podcasting platforms. And if you want to support me financially, there's buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink. Appreciate you watching the video. Thanks for watching. See you down the road.